So there's an article published in the New York Times fairly recently by Jessica Grouse, sorry if I mispronounced that, it's Grose, titled, "Are We Happy Yet?" And in summary, it was arguing, or even just exploring the idea that as a culture, as we become more and more obsessed with happiness, and like, am I happy? Am I not happy? Is my mental health good? Am I feeling good? Am I positive? That hyperfixation and almost like obsession with happiness can actually undermine our happiness. And she gives this personal story where she was doing this program with this app that would prompt you like 20 times throughout the day to check in and be like, how happy are you? And you start to kind of question your sanity a little bit, like, wait, am I happy right now? Am I happy? Am I happy? And it can become kind of this weird thing where maybe all of this neuroticism and stress and frantic energy are actually undermining our happiness, right? Because it's a good thing that we want happiness, we desire it, and we prioritize it. But it's kind of like, you ever feel like you're just like stressing about stress? Like, oh, I'm so stressed out, I shouldn't be stressed out, and that's causing me more stress. It's kind of that paradox, right? So she explores this idea, and I think there are a couple really important consequences or themes that are emerging from that we can take away for our own personal happiness and for happiness as a society, kind of mental health. And we'll start there. There's a hypothesis or theory known as prevalence inflation that was developed at the University of Oxford, and it suggests that a lot of the kind of huge surge in like crisis levels of mental illness and mental disorders that we're seeing nowadays, especially amongst young people, is in part, I think, related to the idea explored in this article. That's that as we increase awareness around mental health and we're all paying more attention to our mental health, that this can actually cause an increase in mental health issues. Now, why would that be? Well, think about it like this. Imagine you're a 15-year-old girl, okay, and you're on TikTok and you're on Instagram fairly frequently, and you hear all of these posts around, mental health and anxiety disorder, and, do you have this disorder? Do you have that disorder? And you have your first date coming up, and so you're feeling a little bit nervous, okay? Now, pausing there, I think we can all understand that feeling pretty anxious and nervous for your first date is a totally natural part of the human experience. But having been exposed again and again and hyperfixating on your mental health or lack thereof, it can be easy to say, oh my gosh, I'm feeling so anxious. Why am I so nervous? Oh, I'm so stressed. Okay, and you start to compound more stress and more anxiety, and then you start to label that as anxiety disorder. Okay, so now all of a sudden you could be saying, oh my gosh, I have anxiety disorder, I need medicated, or I need to see a therapist. Okay, so it's like, how do we distinguish between, again, a good example could be sadness. Okay, something bad happens to you, and of course you feel sad about it. And now that goes on for a couple weeks. And so maybe after a couple weeks, you start to say, am I still grieving this loss, or do I have depression? So how we categorize our own mental states and our own mental health can be biased or influenced by paying more and more attention to mental health. And so same thing she's highlighting here with this obsession over happiness, that sometimes this can paradoxically undermine our mental health, right? You get to this idea of, it's also been called medicalization, where you take these normal human experiences of anxiety or sadness or doubt or insecurity, and they can sometimes have our perceptions are sometimes influenced or biased by all of the prevalence of this messaging that we have mental disorders, and it can kind of undermine our own resiliency. And like I said, it's somewhat about expectation. Do I expect to be a little bit nervous for my first date? Okay, that's fine. I'm going to lean into that and just be excited. Or I can label it the other way, which may undermine my mental health, where I say, oh, I am identifying with this. I do have an anxiety disorder. Okay, so I want to put a bow on that by saying, of course, I respect the fact that mental disorders are very real, and some people do have diagnosable generalized anxiety disorder, but you can start to see how the prevalence inflation hypothesis can be a related idea here, that as we all hyperfixate more and more on questioning our own happiness and mental health, that sometimes it may undermine our own happiness and mental health. Now, the other, I think, shifting to kind of the individual happiness from this article, really important takeaways. It reminds me of the research by Dr. Lahnna Catalino. And she's developed kind of a theory or a model that she calls prioritizing positivity. And I think it's essential because just like this New York Times article pointed out, oftentimes when we hyper focus and obsess over happiness, it can lead us to being a little bit less happy or undermining happiness or kind of questioning where we're at. And what Dr. Lahnna Catalino's research points out is that this is actually true. People who obsess over happiness and focus primarily on the kind of goal of happiness or being happier, and many times actually experience lower levels of subjective well-being and a little bit higher levels of stress. Now, here's the thing. People who prioritize or invest in activities and experiences and things that bring the positive emotions tend to be happier and report higher levels of subjective well-being. So this is a little bit subtle, right? But let's run through it again. It's saying, do you focus on happiness or positive emotion, or do you focus on prioritizing your time and investing more time in the things that bring you the happiness or the positive emotions? So once you hear it, it's a little bit like, maybe that's obvious, but I think I'm guilty of this myself. I'll spend a lot of time thinking like, well, has it been a good week, or have I been doing a good job of practicing what I preach and being happy this week and keeping my stress down? And in some ways, it would be more effective to say, well, forget about the outcome. What are more of the inputs that lead me to feeling happier? So, okay, I'm going to work 5 hours less and spend that time with my friends, or I'm going to make sure I have time to get my full workout in, or I'm going to do some reading and watch a show that I really enjoy. So I think this is a final essential takeaway from this article that is backed by the research. Again, Dr. Lahnna Catalino has some good papers on this, and saying that if you want to be happier, paradoxically, don't necessarily focus on being happier or on happiness. Instead, focus your time and energies into the sources of those positive emotions and happiness and weave those into your day-to-day life. And that will ultimately lead you to being happier rather than focusing on the outcome of being happier. So there you have it. This was an interesting article. You can check it out in the New York Times. But I think that these two big ideas are worth discussing as it relates to this article. Okay, that first, as a culture, as we fixate more and more on happiness, and for you as an individual, you need to be conscious that you're not actually undermining your happiness, okay, and falsely labeling things around it that are not the case. And secondly, if you want to be happier, to the point of this article, don't focus so much on being happier or on happiness, but instead investing your time in the things that bring you that happiness or help you to be happier. So as always, on this channel, you can find the art and science of happiness as I work on building out the Happiness PhD project. So I hope you subscribe. Yeah, check out links down below, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.